The hammerhead has an incredible 360-degree vision that's called binocular. This creature's eyes are tilted forward and their field of vision overlaps. The wobbegong means shaggy beard in an Australian Aboriginal language, and just one look at this underwater inhabitant can explain the name choice. The viper dogfish knows how to create its own light in the deep ocean pitch-dark waters. The animal has needle-like teeth and extendable jaws. This allows it to feed on prey half its size. Now, at first sight, all these creatures have nothing in common whatsoever, but in reality, all of them are sharks. There are more than 500 shark species in the world, and lots of them don't look as if they're related. The most fearsome predators in the ocean, sharks have been around for more than 400 million years. They have adapted to all kinds of tough conditions. Now, some of them can live in freshwater, rivers, and lakes. These creatures vary in size, from as small as a human hand to 40-foot-long whale sharks. Now, most people would probably feel more comfortable without sharks lurking in the ocean depths. But few of them know that the disappearance of sharks would turn into a disaster for our planet. Imagine waking up in the world without these apex predators. If you're a surfer, you wouldn't have to scan the water for a shark's infamous triangular fin. If you're a regular beachgoer, you wouldn't have to be on your toes all the time, ready to sprint toward the shore once you hear a lifeguard's whistle. Movie makers would be confused. They'd have to set off in search of a new villain. But the truth is, sharks aren't as bad as they're pictured. Not all of them are large torpedo-shaped creatures with sharp teeth. For example, the basking shark has small teeth, and it doesn't even use them for feeding. The horned shark's teeth are molar-like and help the animal to crush its hard-shelled prey. And how can a tiny 8-inch-long deep-water dogfish harm you? Unlike what lots of people think, humans aren't sharks' favorite meal. Usually we just get mistaken for similar-sized dolphins and seals. Most shark species prefer fish, squid, and clams. Hey, come to think of it, so do I. Calamari. Some are filter feeders. It means they get food by filtering seawater through their gills or mouth. Anyway, back to the world without sharks. Big shark species are at the top of the ocean food chain. They hunt smaller fish, for example tuna. Those in turn eat even smaller sea inhabitants, mostly bottom-feeding species that live off algae. If sharks disappeared, it would totally mess up the entire food chain. Without sharks to control the fish population, the smallest algae eaters would soon be swallowed up by predators. No bottom feeders, and algae would grow wild. Along with bacteria, they would move to coral reefs. Corals wouldn't be able to photosynthesize. Sunlight they use to get nutrients from the water and carbon dioxide wouldn't reach them. Reefs would fade away, leaving behind skeletons that would later turn into limestone. It would lead to many marine species going extinct. Algae would also clog up fish gills and pollute water and seafood. Shark remains are an important food source for lots of marine inhabitants, for example, orcas, other sharks, and even octopuses. Without these remains, these species would be at risk of starvation. Or let's say tiger sharks. They live in seagrass meadows and prevent turtles from overgrazing the area. If sharks weren't on the lookout, all this underwater vegetation would be gone in no time. And that would create a huge problem. Scientists claim that 50 to 80% of Earth's oxygen is produced in the ocean by plankton. That's algae, drifting plants, and some kinds of bacteria. Normally, sharks feed on fish that gobble down ocean-generating plankton. No sharks, and there might be a serious shortage of oxygen in the world. Little fish would thrive, but only at first. If there were no sharks, injured and sick fish, their most common prey, would unbalance the schools they live in. This would cause nothing but chaos. Plus, fish left without control would eat everything they see – little shrimps, plankton, and other microorganisms. Soon, all of this would be gone, and fish would eventually starve. It would affect not only the world's ecosystem, but also the economy, like it happened once in North Carolina. Great white sharks were overfished there, and it allowed the ray population to grow. It resulted in hundreds of hungry rays eating all the bay scallops. The local fishery had to close. When there were no more scallops, rays moved on to other shelled sea creatures. The disappearance of sharks would also harm ecotourism. For example, in the Bahamas, just one reef shark brings about $250,000 over its lifetime. Divers pay this money to see the creature in its natural environment. One living whale shark brings Belize $2 million during its lifetime. Besides, if there were no sharks, we would never know how amazing these creatures are. See for yourself. Sharks don't have bones. Their skeletons are made of cartilage, just like some parts of your ears and your nose tip. Cartilage is way lighter than real bones. Plus, sharks' liver are filled with oils. That's what helps them to be so buoyant. From afar, sharks' skin may seem to be as smooth as that of dolphins, but in reality, it resembles sandpaper. It's made up of teeny teeth-like scales. They point toward the tail and reduce water friction when sharks swim. Even though sharks don't have bones, their bodies can fossilize. As these predators age, they store calcium in their skeletons to make them stronger. That's why million-year-old shark jaws feel as heavy and solid as bones. Sharks have small black spots near their eyes, nose, and mouth. They allow these animals to sense electromagnetic fields and temperature changes in the ocean. Most shark species have an amazing night vision. Even cooler, they can see colors. They have special reflective tissue at the back of their eyes, which helps them see perfectly with little light. Now, you might be able to tell a shark's age by counting the rings on its vertebrae. Each vertebra has pairs of semi-transparent and non-transparent bands. If a vertebra has 10 band pairs, the shark is 10 years old. Such a count is not always correct, but still. The great white shark's bite is no joke. A 21-foot-long creature can produce a force of more than 4,000 pounds per 1 square inch. It means the fish's jaws are 4 times more powerful than those of a lion or tiger. And you, with your bite force of 150 to 200 pounds per square inch, aren't even in the running. Sharks can heat their eyes thanks to a special retina. It helps them to have a better resolution of everything they see around and detect their prey. Some bottom-dwelling shark species, for example nurse or angel sharks, have a special opening behind their eyes. It supplies oxygen directly to their brain and eyes. Sharks use this organ when they're resting at the seafloor or eating. But most shark species have to swim all the time to pump water over their gills. Sharks live in all oceans on the planet, but several species feel great in freshwater. Bull sharks, for example, can be found in tropical rivers. They've adapted and can now live in both fresh and salt water. And river sharks, true to their name, swim in the rivers of New Guinea, Australia, and South Asia. The number of teeth may vary from species to species, but most sharks have more than 15 rows of them in each jaw. One line after another, they go from the largest and most functional up front to the smaller and less powerful in the back. A shark can have as many as 35,000 cavity-resistant teeth in a lifetime. Now, you, as a human, can shift only your lower jaw, but a shark can move both its upper and lower jaws. It allows the creature to have a better grip while hunting. Sharks not only smell things exceptionally well, their hearing is excellent too. They can spot their prey from 3,000 feet away because they hear low-frequency sounds. The predators will easily recognize the sounds made by a fish's contracting muscle tissue. Sharks are slow-growing species, and they don't breed often. It makes them extremely vulnerable. People had better protect these creatures rather than fear them. Oh, and finally, when you go to the casino poker tables, be wary of one more species, the card shark. If you're not careful, he'll take all your money. Now get a load of this. A red whirlwind sweeps along the coast of Australia and heads toward the nearest city. This tornado is unique, not by its color, but by what is hidden inside it. These are great white sharks, hammerhead sharks, tiger sharks, and bull sharks. Shark! They fly inside the hurricane, snapping their jaws and trying to grab a piece of meat. People who look at this bizarre phenomenon from the outside think that they've got something in their drinks. But this is reality. A shark tornado can really exist? Or not? Yeah, let's find out. In 1877, a rather unusual tornado struck a farm in Southern California. About 6 small alligators about 1 foot in length fell from the sky that day. In 1894, a tornado traveled through England and dropped poisonous jellyfish on people. There's a version that tadpoles instead of jellyfish fell on the ground that day, but it still sounds quite strange. In Kentucky in 1876, there was a black humor rain. Doesn't sound funny to me. Pieces of meat fell from the sky. The locals tasted them and said it was like mutton or venison. However, later, birds discovered that a flock of buzzards had flown over that area. The birds felt unwell and regurgitated their lunch right in the air. And then, I assume, so did the locals who tried it. In 1947, fish fell from the sky in Marksville, Louisiana. In 2005, there was a rain that contained thousands of frogs in Serbia. In 2010, a small town in Australia was hit by a rain of perches, fish. And now, imagine that all these strange phenomena were caused by one villainous corporation where evil geniuses work, and one of them is you. So, you decide to make the most incredible natural cataclysm in history, a tornado of sharks, or sharknado. It seems like it's impossible, but you're going to try, because you have nothing better to do. So first, we need to understand what a waterspout is. It's a column of rotating air filled with clouds. This vortex occurs during a thunderstorm when warm air releases a large amount of heat. This heat becomes the energy that moves the rising air currents. This warm, moist air goes up, and cold, dry air descends. The difference in temperatures preserves instability and helps tornadoes develop. When it forms over the water, a tornado becomes a waterspout. It can draw in particles of seawater, some objects, and even fish. But everything depends on the strength of this vortex. You've probably seen it when tornadoes lifted cars into the air or tore the roofs off of buildings. There's a video on the internet where a tornado raises cows into the air, and an ordinary cow weighs about 1,400 pounds. Ooh. Now, in comparison, the great white shark is about 4,400 pounds. If a tornado could lift several cows, it could cope with a shark. But besides the great white one, there are tiger sharks, bull sharks, and hammerhead sharks. All of them weigh less. Therefore, there's no doubt that a tornado could possibly lift them into the air too. Okay, now we can assume it's in the realm of possibilities. The next step is to create a real tornado. To do this, you need to heat the air and then make it rotate. The cold air will start to go down and you will get a whirlwind. One engineer from Canada named Lewis built devices that created tornadoes. He made several prototypes before assembling a real vortex engine. According to him, anyone can do it. However, these vortices were small. His device created thin jets of air that swirled and produced mini tornadoes, which then quickly dissipated due to strong winds. Lewis started developing this idea to get a new source of electricity, but he needed to create a giant vortex that would go into the sky to power several houses. He didn't have enough finances and opportunities to do this, but the place where you work has enough money to do it. You take the concept of the vortex engine and invest several $1 million. You build several large turbines that direct air to one point and then heat it with the help of a powerful generator. To give your tornado more destructive power, you electrify the atmosphere. You can control the tornado and change its direction using a special control panel. You little evil mad scientist, you. So you come to the coast of Australia, where there are many sharks of different species. To force them to gather in one place, you must throw several tons of minced meat into the water near the shore. Let me suggest that you don't do this by hand. The sharks immediately come there as soon as they smell the food. But there's a problem. These animals feel changes in the weather and don't approach the center of the storm. Therefore, to make sharks take risks, you need to make them angry and hungry enough. You go, Dr. Doofenshmirtz. You spend millions of dollars to organize large-scale fishing. You throw huge nets into the water, and within a week, catch all the fish, shellfish, and other marine life that can become dinner for sharks. You move all the prey into giant aquariums and wait for the sharks to get hungry. A few days later, you notice many big fish congregating near the shore, looking for food. Then, You buy a couple of tons of ground beef from several butcher shops. You put it in a large container and lift it with the help of a helicopter. You dump the meat in a place where you see a lot of sharks. Lunch attracts fish within a 1-mile radius. At this moment, a large ship with the tornado generator approaches the shore. Hey, can't quit now, right? You start the engines and strong flows of warm air accumulate in the sky. Electricity flashes and condensation creates rain. A powerful vortex begins to form in the sky. You control it and direct it towards the sharks. The whirlwind pulls pieces of ground beef from the water. The dust particles mix with the meat and the tornado turns red. Oh, I think I'm gonna barf. You increase the strength of the wind and see how the sharks begin to rise into the air. More precisely, they jump out of the water to grab the meat, and the tornado picks them up. When several sharks are inside the vortex, you direct them toward the shore. People are running in horror. Some sharks fall back into the water, and some fall to the beach. The hammerhead shark falls right into the kitchen of a coastal restaurant and eats the whole menu. The shark is also a pig. You direct the sharknado into the city. The storm lifts trees and cars into the air and rips off the roofs of houses. Some sharks fall down to the streets. People are running in different directions. The shark vortex passes through the city, scattering sharks. Of course, sharks don't crawl on the ground and don't try to eat people. They're just in shock and don't understand what's going on. Hey, what can I say? It's a PG sharknado. Even in the ocean, sharks don't like to bite people. All attacks occur because sharks mistake them for seals or other sea creatures, which all look like food. Also, toothy fish can swim up to people out of curiosity. And now they're disoriented and having big breathing problems. Fish need a constant flow of water passing through their oxygen-extracting gills. Depending on the species, sharks can last without water for several minutes to an hour. At this moment, you realize that you have carried out not a villainous plan, but a stupid thing that has caused so many fish to suffer. Now, you need to fix everything. You have several helicopters that can transport the fish back into the ocean, but they're twitching and snapping their jaws in fear. Therefore, to calm them down, you use darts with sedatives. Then you help rescuers to fasten the sharks to the helicopters and lift them into the air. You have to get one fish out of an apartment on the 7th floor. Another shark was lying in the park. A hammerhead caused a big traffic jam on the road, and this tiger shark fell on a fire truck. Fortunately, they all have tough skin and strong muscles that protect them from damage. You pick up all the sharks and move them back to the ocean. No one and nothing has been hurt except for one thing: your reputation. You have failed your villainous plan and need to develop something new. This time, you'll create something that will really terrify people. You will invent a YouTube channel with nothing but ads. Alternate ending. You will invent a mega flood of spiders. Ew! Wow, look at this cute little cookie cutter. At first glance, it looks like an oversized anchovy, but in reality, it's an undersized shark. This shark never grows bigger than 18 to 20 inches, but it doesn't make it less dangerous than its peers. They got their sweet cookie name because they have a unique feeding strategy. They bite off small chunks from much larger animals and get away with it. These little guys live deep down in the water column, making them quite mysterious and hard to study. We don't know exactly where they hang out, but they've been spotted all over the world, especially in tropical and temperate areas. The cookie cutter shark is a total parasite. It feeds off larger animals while keeping them alive. It uses its sharp upper teeth to latch onto the skin of bigger sharks, fish, or even marine mammals. Then, with its strong lower teeth, it scoops out a mouth-sized chunk of flesh or blubber. Ow! So watch out, because even big predators like bluefin tuna, great white sharks, and spinner dolphins can end up with scars from these little sharks. Now, there's one crazy story about a cookie cutter shark biting a person. Picture this: a long-distance athlete swimming between islands in Hawaii at night, surrounded by boats with bright lights attracting prey. Yep, that swimmer got a nasty bite on the calf, leaving a gnarly scar, but luckily no permanent damage. Lesson learned: don't mess with cookie-cutter sharks during their feeding frenzy. To hunt like this, they have a well-equipped mouth. The mouth itself is like a short line that goes across, surrounded by these big fleshy lips that can suck stuff up. It's got a bunch of tooth rows in its jaws, like 30 to 37 in the top and 25 to 31 in the bottom, and they increase as it gets bigger. The upper teeth are small and narrow, standing up straight with a single smooth, pointy bit. The lower teeth, on the other hand, are way bigger and wider, almost like knives, and they interlock to make a saw-like cutting edge. Just like any other shark, cookie cutters lose their teeth throughout their lives. But here's where they're different: they swallow their lost teeth. Some scientists think they do this because they live in nutrient-poor deep waters and want to recycle important tooth-building materials, like calcium. That's a brand new approach to diet supplements, huh? Since they feed closer to the surface at night and deeper during the day, they're almost always in the dark. So, this sneaky little shark has these special light-producing organs called photophores that are strategically placed on its belly. These photophores help it blend in with the light coming from above, kind of like camouflage. It's a classic move in the bioluminescent world. The cookie-cutter shark also has this cool, non-glowing collar around its throat. Some scientists think this collar acts like a fancy lure, making it look like a tasty little fish from below. Imagine how irresistible that would be to a whole gang of hungry sharks. It's like a dinner invitation they can't refuse.
At the beginning of the 20th century, somewhere off the coast of West Africa, a German steamship was leaving the port. Suddenly, the weather got worse, and the vessel entered a thick fog. The sailors ran aground on a sandbank close to the shore. Luckily, no one was hurt, and they were even able to save their precious cargo. But the ship was stuck in the sand for good. And it was not alone there. Nearly the entire length of the western coast of Namibia is called Skeleton Coast. If the name sounds scary, that's because it is. This 976-mile-long beach line is among the most dangerous places on Earth. The local Bushman tribes believe that their supreme deity made this land when it was angry. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to set foot in Namibia in the 15th century. And yep, they didn't like Skeleton Coast either. Portuguese explorers thought this land presented the gates to the underworld. This is the place where the Namib Desert meets the Atlantic Ocean. It might be dangerous, but it's actually beautiful. Plus, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. If Skeleton Coast had a PR manager, they would quit on the first day on the job. The area is not exactly tourist-friendly because of its geography and history. Beneath the sand and the waves, there is a secret ocean currently lurking for unsuspecting sailors. It's called Benguela Current. It flows towards the north along the coast of southern Africa. This part of the Atlantic is rich in marine life, but the current's land neighbor isn't that happy with the deal. This arid climate created the Namib Desert, one of the driest regions on Earth. And that marine life I just mentioned? It's sharks. 11 species of them to be exact. And yes, the great white decides to pop by once in a while. So far, we've got a desert landscape, strong currents, and sharks. Not a place for a beachside resort, definitely. But if someone ends up on Skeleton Coast, will they know they're in danger? Don't worry, they will. The beach is littered with wrecks of all sizes and shapes. If you remember that German ship I mentioned in the very beginning, its massive and rusted stern is now sticking out from the desert sand. There are some 500 wrecks in total scattered along the coast, and it's a mixed crowd, from Portuguese galleons centuries old to ships that ran ashore here in the 21st century. A modern fishing ship called Zela India managed to slip from its tow rope in 2008 and ended up on Skeleton Coast. Okay, it didn't escape on its own, it had some help from the elements. But it's better to be a tourist attraction on a beach than to be broken up for scrap. That's where the trawler was originally going, poor thing. Skeleton Coast's most famous inhabitant, to call it such a place, is the wreck of the Dunedin Star. The British cargo liner ran aground here in 1942. The massive rescue operation that followed reveals why it's so dangerous for sailors to end up here. The rescuers managed to save all of the crew and passengers, but at a heavy price. An aircraft and a tugboat were lost in the process. It took the last of the rescuers a full 2 months to return home to Cape Town. Why, you might wonder? One look at the map of the region reveals the reason. It's an endless sea of yellow, which is the sand. There are so few roads here, so Skeleton Coast is hard to reach by land. There are also legal obstacles. You need a special permit to drive into the area. But the skeletons in the name of the area don't only refer to ships, they also stand for animal bones. Most of these belong to whales and seals. Many animals have adapted to the area, so lions and hyenas roam the coastline in search of a meal. Yeah, now there are hungry lions as well, as if those sharks weren't enough. Other animals with a temporary residence on Skeleton Coast include elephants, cheetahs, leopards, and giraffes. In 1971, the Namibian authorities established a national park here, but except for surfers, after an adrenaline rush, they don't get many visitors. You can understand why. The Namib Desert is the oldest desert in the world, and it's not very tourist-friendly either. Those who travel to the region should pack sunscreen and a warm winter jacket. A weird combo, right? Well, not so much when you think that during the day, temperatures soar over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. At night, the air temperature drops below freezing. What a climate roller coaster! And that's not the final danger. Yep, there's more. Remember how that German ship got lost in thick fog? Yeah, it wasn't a one-off event. Because of the region's climate, fog shows up frequently. Sailors should cover their ears now, but this fog is actually good for wildlife. This is their only source of water in the Namib Desert. Reptiles and mammals have adapted to the harsh climate. They use as little water as possible. Shifting sands, thick fog, strong currents, lions, and sharks. Not the stuff you would put in a tourist booklet. But Skeleton Coast isn't the only beach on Earth you wouldn't want to spend your vacation on. I will take you to Cape Tribulation in Australia. The area covers some 48 square miles in the northwestern part of the continent. And no, the area is not as dry as Skeleton Coast. It's part of the Daintree rainforest. You could say that here, it is the rainforest, not the desert that meets the ocean. The beach at Cape Tribulation is straight from a postcard. But looks can be deceiving. Australia? Probably sharks. No, crocodiles are out here to get you if you decide to go for a dip in the sea. There are saltwater crocodiles that the locals call salties. Well, that's a cute nickname for such a dangerous reptile. And it's not just them. The wildlife seems to have a beef with visitors. From October to June, the waters around Cape Tribulation are full of box jellyfish. Their venom affects the human cardiovascular system. When touched by a jellyfish out at sea, swimmers won't have enough time to reach land for help. Vinegar helps neutralize the sting, so you might want to keep a spare bottle in your luggage. Crocodiles and jellyfish sound dangerous, but there's one more animal you should look after. It's the wild boar. It might sound funny, but you won't laugh when you're being chased by one of these across the beach. 21 million wild boars live in Australia. They're mostly active at night, making it even more dangerous if they charge at you. The best defense is running in circles. Wild boars can't cut corners well. That's probably why we don't see many of them taking up careers as race drivers. Cape Tribulation has one last danger installed for you, and it's not an animal. Out here, even the trees are plotting against visitors. The stinging tree got its name for a reason. If you try to pick one of its beautiful red berries, it'll fight back. Its prickles are like tiny glass shards. The less than pleasant effect on your skin will last for a month. Then there is this wait a while bush. Who keeps naming them like this? This long vine has spikes that grab hold and just don't let go. They are so strong they can pull a human off a horse. You'll have to wait for someone to come by and save you from this thorny grabber. If you are about to cross this Australian beach from the vacation list, hold on for a second. Tourism is booming here. The local authorities have restricted access to all of the danger zones. Visitors go swimming in dreamy water holes that are surrounded by lush vegetation. There are even ropes to swing from. Now, that's a beach you can finally relax on.
The movie Jaws came out in 1975, and since then, people have been terrified of sharks. Some people fear seeing a great white's head come out of their showers, not to mention the fear of running into one at your local pool. Of course, none of this is actually possible, but some other scary shark stuff is. Like, yes, sharks can attack boats. They probably won't sink one. It depends on the size of the shark and the size of the boat. Today, we're diving deep into the facts and myths about the sea's biggest predator. It was the year 1953. On a typical July morning, two fishers set out on their daily lobster harvest. They took their white-hulled dory out to sea off the coast of Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia, Canada. Since it was the lobster season, the sea was dotted with several dories spread out across the water. But that day, something strange happened. As soon as they put the dory at sea, they noticed a large dorsal fin chasing after their boat. They were surprised to see that the shark would follow their boat's every move. For an entire week, they took out their white dory from the harbor, and the shark followed them around. Until one morning, as the men were alone at sea, the shark charged at full speed at the boat and smashed a 7-inch hole in its bottom. The boat turned over, and both men fell into the water. The shark didn't come after the men, though. Instead, it swam away and disappeared for good. To clarify, a dory is a small, fragile boat usually measuring 16 to 23 feet long. So how long did that shark need to be in order to sink it? Well, as soon as the boat was retrieved from the ocean, researchers found something interesting. One of the shark's teeth was found stuck in the hull. According to Harvard experts that analyzed the tooth, it most certainly belonged to a 12-foot white shark that weighed around 1,200 pounds. One thing intrigued scientists a whole lot. The great white didn't seem to be interested in the men aboard, but rather in the boat itself. The question is, why? Some people suppose that this great white followed the dory around because it was white, and the animal probably thought it was some big white mammal. It's not the first boat a shark has attacked. You see, sharks don't attempt to sink boats because they're mean and evil. Rather, it's due to murky waters and hard materials that make them mistake inanimate objects for their usual lunch menu. But that's not what we've learned from popular culture. In Jaws, the protagonist shark managed to poke several holes in the orca as it rammed the boat. The orca was a Nova Scotia-style fishing boat, made out of wood planks. It wasn't a huge boat, so it seemed plausible that a great white could ram it. But, according to Mythbusters, that's very far from the truth. A great white swimming at its maximum speed wouldn't be able to take down a medium-sized fishing vessel. The same goes for bigger boats. Some bull sharks or great whites can turn over smaller vessels, though, like kayaks or small boats. If this happens, it's most likely because they think it's a sea mammal and nudge it before taking the first bite. No scientist can say for sure why they do this, only that it's usually a misunderstanding on behalf of the animal. The Shark Research Committee, a nonprofit scientific research organization, has documented a lot of shark attacks on inanimate objects and is trying to answer that question more thoroughly. So far, they've observed several attacks on objects such as crab trap buoys and inflatable float bags. The website has also registered 2 famous attacks on boats. The first one happened in 1959, and a shark left a tooth on the hull of a boat. Researchers later identified it as belonging to a 12-foot great white. The report of the other attack, which happened in 1989, claims that a boat was circled by a great white before the animal swam at the vessel at full speed and hit the boat several times. Of course, those who suffer the most from shark attacks and encounters aren't boats, it's surfers. As far as we know, surfers look like giant wobbly seals from the shark's perspective. According to the Shark Research Committee, there have been 41 confirmed shark attacks on surfers on the west coast of North America over the course of the last century. So, should we be so afraid of sharks after all? Let's learn more about these magnificent sea creatures. Off the top of your head, how many shark species can you name? 4, 8, 10? Well, there are over 500 species of sharks swimming in the ocean. They vary from tiny specimens, about the size of a human hand, to up to 39-foot-long creatures. The largest species of shark are actually not great whites, but whale sharks. And even those are small compared to the great Megalodon. This ancient creature that lived around 20 million years ago reached an unimaginable length of 60 feet. By comparison, that's the same as 2 to 3 buses placed one after another. I wouldn't swim in Megalodon-infested waters even if you dared me, that's for sure. We know that sharks are very good hunters, but why is that so? Their bodies seem to have been strategically built for speed. Instead of having a bone skeleton, like us humans, sharks have a cartilage skeleton, which makes them much lighter and also super fast swimmers. Each species of shark hunts depending on its nutritional needs. So, shark species that grow to an average of 3 feet have a diet based on fish. The ones that grow bigger start feeding off of bigger sea animals, such as sea lions and seals. Throughout their lives, some species of shark can shed over 30,000 teeth. Unlike humans, who are born with a set number of teeth in their jaws, sharks have an apparently limitless supply. In their defense, they do lose teeth pretty easily, as they can easily get stuck in their prey, for example. They also have multiple rows of teeth. The jaws of a great white can contain up to 7 rows of teeth, and can grow to be more than 6 inches long. And since we're speaking of great whites, the most feared shark species roaming the oceans, this is ray. Ray is an adult white shark. He can swim up to 50 miles a day, so he needs a lot of fat in order to keep his body functioning. Funny thing about Ray, when he opens his jaws to hunt, his eyes roll back together with his head, so his sight is hindered when he's taking a bite. Now, he does like it when the water is murky and underwater visibility is low. That's because it makes it harder for his prey to spot him coming. These conditions can make it easier for him to grab that yummy seal. But this can also make it easy for him to mistake a random boat for lunch and end up scaring some humans. Some Hollywood movies love to portray sharks as having superpowers. Although they're not innately cruel, one species of shark does have something that can be considered bizarre. Hammerhead sharks, one of the most dangerous species of sharks, have a sort of sixth sense. Inside their heads, they have electroreceptor organs called ampullae of Lorenzini. These organs allow sharks to detect the electromagnetic fields of all living things in the ocean. This ups their hunting abilities to another level. They can even find prey hidden in the sand because they sense its electromagnetic field. You should know one thing. If a shark lives in a balanced ecosystem, it won't feel the need to attack unknown things. These animals are curious, though, so maybe we should cut them some slack when they bite a piece off a random boat. Have you ever heard of an island that is regularly attacked by sharks? For many years, people living there haven't been able to find a way to stop this. Neither can they understand why sharks come there so often. So, what's going on? Why do these predators keep bothering this specific island while completely ignoring the others in the area? Let's go to this mysterious place and try to find out. July 22nd, 2015. The ocean waters near Reunion Island were clear and transparent. The western part of the island, St. Lou, had always been a great spot for surfing. But on this pleasant sunny day, one of the locals almost lost his life. A 6-foot bull shark appeared out of nowhere. Once right next to the shore, it suddenly charged at surfer Rodolphe Arriagui. His friend, doctor and professor of geography at the University of La Reunion, Erwan Lagabriel, was nearby, talking with 2 other surfers at that moment. Suddenly, they heard some noise. Realizing that it was his friend, La Gabrielle rushed to help. The shark was 65 feet away from him. He said that all of this felt like some kind of a horror movie. He rushed to Ariagi, even though he didn't understand what exactly had happened. At first, Ariagi's body was surrounded by white foam. It then began to turn pink, and then red. La Gabrielle said later that it had been one of the scariest things he had seen in his life. Fortunately, when he swam closer, the shark had already been gone. La Gabrielle knew that in most cases, a second attack doesn't happen, so he hurried to help his friend. It took them some time to get back to the shore. When La Gabrielle pulled his friend onto the beach, he immediately made a tourniquet from a surfboard leash. After that, Monsieur Ariagi was rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, this story has a good ending. Although the 45-year-old man lost his arm, he still survived. But he was one of the few lucky ones, because this horrifying story is just one of dozens that happened on Reunion Island in recent decades. Reunion Island is one of the regions of France. It's located right near Madagascar, together with its neighbor, Mauritius. They're both located at the same latitude as Australia. These two islands are very similar. They have almost the same climate and natural conditions, similar languages and cultures. But there's one huge difference between the two of them. In Mauritius, people can relax and have fun in the warm waters of the Indian Ocean, swimming with scuba gear and watching dolphins. Meanwhile, on La Reunion, locals are afraid even to put their fingers in the water. But why is that? Unfortunately, Reunion now has a strong reputation as a shark island. By 2018, 56 attacks had occurred there. From 2011 to 2016, the number of these cases accounted for 16% of the worldwide shark attacks. Now there are warning signs everywhere on Reunion. Local citizens and fishers have begun to discuss the options of large-scale shark trapping. The authorities forbid people to swim almost everywhere, except for a few more or less safe places, like, for example, a coral lagoon. And still, any fisher or scientist knows that sharks can easily get inside these coral rings. In other words, locals and tourists can't feel completely safe anywhere on the island. Meanwhile, in Mauritius, the last shark attack happened in the 1980s. People come here to relax, and everything is perfectly fine. So the question is, why in the world is La Reunion so unlucky? Dr. La Gabrielle, the hero I mentioned before, set himself the goal of explaining this strange phenomenon. His study showed that over the past 30 years, the probability of a shark attack on Reunion had increased by 23 times. And in 9 out of 10 cases, it turns out to be a bull shark. If you haven't heard about it, this creature looks exactly like what you would imagine when you hear the word shark. It's one of the most popular species and the one that you often see in different movies and cartoons. These sharks live in tropical and subtropical waters in all oceans. Most often, they're found, yeah, you've probably already guessed, in the southern waters between Australia and South Africa. This place is even nicknamed a shark highway because these predators really like to chill around there. This is also one of the most aggressive shark species, and it's very dangerous for humans. Unfortunately, it's also very tolerant to different water salinity, which means they can basically swim even in fresh water and be totally cool with it. But why do all these Reunion Island attacks happen so often? Well, there are many theories and many different factors that might play their role in all this. Marc Soria, a researcher at the IRD, the French National Institute for Research and Development, decided to conduct a study together with his team. They spent 3 years trying to collect data on 45 tiger sharks and 38 bull sharks living in local waters. The National Research Institute of France supported this study. It was also funded by 3 research foundations: regional, national, and European. That's when you know that the problem is serious. And now, here are the main theories developed by Soria's team and La Gabrielle. The first one is excessive fishing. Experts suggest that long-term fishing and catching small reef sharks, which competed with dangerous sharks for food and territory, eventually led to these dramatic consequences. Unfortunately, when predatory bull sharks ran out of food, They just had to go looking for it near the coast. For bull sharks, surfers on Reunion look like sick, weakened fish, and therefore an easy meal. Also, while in Mauritius, surfers tend to hang out near sandy beaches. On Reunion, they choose places where waves break at coral reefs. But this is exactly where the sharks choose to search for food. So, yeah. The second possible reason is muddy waters. Bull sharks like such conditions very much, and although there are no natural places like these on Reunion, the reason could be the construction of urban areas. Muddy freshwater gets into bays from cities. This water attracts sharks, and this is where the attacks take place most often. But then we can ask again, why not Mauritius? Urbanization is also in full swing there after all. There are many places in Mauritius where sewage waters flow into the ocean. Well, then we can conclude that this is not the only factor. There have to be others. For example, there is an active volcano, Piton de la Fournaise, on Reunion Island. Thanks to this beautiful volcano, there are rich flora and fauna on the island. And this could be great if it didn't attract too much attention from predators. Because of the volcano, the shores of Reunion are less steep, which makes it easier to swim closer to the coast. And sedimentary rocks that get washed away from the slopes of the volcano can attract bull sharks. As we already know, these guys love muddy waters. There are some other theories. For example, La Gabrielle suggests that attacks may be connected to an increase in the shark population. Or maybe that's because these creatures become more aggressive during mating periods. Some people assume that all of this could be Mauritius's fault because they banned catching and selling sharks for meat. But Surya and other experts strongly disagree with this. Not many people on both islands bought this meat to make any significant difference. Anyway, this whole situation caused a lot of tension on Reunion. A big part of the population now supports the idea of catching sharks on a large scale. They also built some underwater fences near the island, and the maintenance of these fences costs $1 million a year. It may seem pretty extreme, but drastic times require drastic measures. But despite all these terrible stories, in general, sharks aren't nearly as dangerous as we think. They almost never attack divers, unless a person provokes them. Experienced divers often compare sharks with stray dogs. These animals shouldn't be feared, but should be respected. Anyway, let's hope that La Reunion will be able to solve this problem, and people will be able to swim in its warm, beautiful waters again.
The Megalodon was the biggest shark to ever live. Not only that, it's one of the biggest fish and the largest predator in Earth's history. Over 3 times longer than the biggest great white shark on record, the females have also been found to be twice the size of the males. The Megalodon could swallow a small car without even touching its teeth, if cars had been around then. In fact, the Meg was so big and powerful that it had no natural predators. It was the uncrowned king of the seas, swimming freely from ocean to ocean. This cosmopolitan creature was found all over the world, from America to Europe and Australia and Japan, assuming there were countries back then. Meg fossils have been found on every continent except Antarctica. Everybody skips Antarctica. Science tells us that the Megalodon went extinct over 3.6 million years ago, but could they still be alive at the deepest depths of the ocean? The fearsome name, Megalodon, comes from 2 Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it's certainly lived up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The Megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. Only around 80% of the ocean has been explored, so who knows what's lurking at the bottom. If you did manage to make it down, it's unlikely that you'll run into Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely that they're still around, but not impossible. Now, about the appearance of the Megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a great white shark. The Megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin moved backward. The sand shark has two dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly. It may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the Megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here is the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of giant great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg. But they weren't the best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter, using its smaller size and agility to snap up Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't help the whole extinction thing. We also have evidence that megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The Megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the Megalodon was comparable to a large truck. While a great white was no match for an adult Meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg. But its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the Meg behind. The Megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several Megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny Megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too. But how come there are so many Megalodon teeth out there for us to analyze? Due to their messy, aggressive eating habits, sharks regularly lose their teeth. They lose a set of teeth every 1 to 2 weeks. That's 40,000 teeth in a lifetime. They must rake in a fortune from the tooth fairy. Because of this, their teeth were continually raining down to the ocean floor. Luckily for us, they're also the hardest part of the shark skeleton, which is why so many teeth have survived and become fossilized. It's fair to say the first discoveries of the Meg's teeth confused people. Early discoverers thought that the Meg's teeth were petrified tongues of ancient serpent creatures. They even used to call them tongue stones. It's also a common myth that the Megalodon was around at the same time as the dinosaurs, although this would have been pretty cool. The dinosaurs were wiped out around 66 million years ago, but the Megalodons came much later. The oldest Meg fossil is only around 23 million years old, but it's tricky to pinpoint the exact date. After all, calendars weren't invented yet. They became extinct way before humans even evolved. The earliest Homo sapiens, which is a fancy name for the first humans, emerged about 2.5 million years ago. But what if the Megalodon shark didn't go extinct? Whale populations have dropped drastically since these guys were last around, so there'd be way fewer whales for them to chomp down on. Whales have also gotten a lot smarter and learned new defensive moves, making them way harder to take down. It's estimated that they ate around 12 tons of food each day. The Kraken is a colossal squid, a legendary sea monster, the biggest hunk of calamari you ever saw. And if this monster had existed, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The Kraken has powerful tentacles, solid muscles with suckers at the end. They're impossible to escape. The Kraken can break a ship in half, or just pull it down into the depths. But the worst thing about the Kraken is its size. According to old sailors' stories, its size is almost 10 soccer fields. Hey, maybe the Kraken could play soccer. The Kraken legends said the monster was so giant that sailors mistook it for a small island. In past centuries, it would have been impossible to defeat such a beast. If the Kraken existed in reality, it might have had offspring. Yeah. In all the world's oceans, there would be giant monsters that could sink any ship. It's unlikely that the Kraken would have competitors in its habitat, so its population would grow strongly. Since the Kraken is enormous, it would need a lot of food, so the population of other large sea animals would fall significantly. Blue whales, great white sharks, other giant squids, all the big sea creatures would be endangered. The Kraken belongs to the cephalopod genus. This species includes squid and octopus, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. The Kraken is a skilled hunter and will never fight in the open. Colossal squids live in deep waters and they have the largest eyes among all animals. The squid's eye is the size of a dinner plate. Thanks to this, they can see their prey from far away. Similarly, a Kraken would spot the ship much sooner than sonar could pick up the Kraken. It would always have the drop on you. Well, that's not good. In 1857, a squid beak was discovered on the coast of Denmark. Other huge squid remains were found in the Bahamas, and then scientists were convinced that gigantic squids existed. While colossal squid have been officially discovered since then, it's been more than 100 years and we still don't know what the max size they can grow to. The fact is, colossal squids are one of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They live in the depths of the ocean where it's challenging for scientists to reach. Any dive to a greater depth requires powerful, bulky equipment. Underwater bathyscaphs and cameras make a lot of noise and light, which squids notice from afar. They flee before we can see them. It's difficult to say if these huge squids were the size of a small island, but the truth is, we've only studied about 5% of the ocean. It may be that in its depths, monsters much more terrible than the Kraken swim.
$450 million years ago, no, I wasn't around then, the sea level was higher, coral reefs started to form, the climate on our planet was stable and warm, not even dinosaurs were around yet. The time when bony and jawed fish we know as sharks appeared. They've been dominating the oceans and making other marine creatures flee in fear ever since. Many of them, like great white sharks, have evolved and adjusted to life in the open ocean as hunters with a pretty high position in the food chain. They're less diverse today than before. One of the reasons is the asteroid strike from the age of dinosaurs. After it reduced the number of shark species, only smaller and deep-water kinds that ate primarily fish survived. They started getting bigger over time. Near the surface, sharks such as makos or great white ones develop faster movements and are somewhat between gray and blue to blend in with their surroundings. The epaulet shark can even walk on the land. It can't take a walk on the beach because it can't breathe outside of the water, but it lives on coral flats in shallow tropical waters, so it can walk in kind of a crawling motion. But deep down below, there are mysterious, alien-looking, often huge shark species that didn't come to the surface, which is why they didn't need to adjust to the new environment and different conditions. They haven't changed a lot through time, so they're some living fossils. These creatures mostly don't have 5 gill slits, the most common number, but 6 or 7. It's because there's less oxygen the deeper you go in the ocean, so they need more gill slits. Sharks on the surface evolved to have fewer gill slits. 6-gill sharks are the most primitive sharks we have today. Their skeletons are like those of ancient extinct sharks, and they can survive only in very deep waters. Like cats, sharks have a layer of reflective cells placed inside their eyes, which helps them see better in the dark, deep sea or cloudy waters. Sharks on the surface have big eyes because they evolved to hunt in the sunlight, so they tend to rely on their vision. Those that live in shallow waters have small eyes, so they can protect themselves from the sand. Like some other deep-sea creatures, 6-gill sharks also have bigger eyes to take in as much light as possible. They have more light-sensing rods, but don't distinguish colors that well. In the ocean's twilight zone, with the minimum of sunlight, There's a couple of bioluminescent shark species. They don't take in light within their eyes, but produce or re-emit it with their bodies. Their skin or organs have specialized cells that produce a soft blue-green light. Deep-sea creatures that produce their own light do that to attract their prey, deter animals from going after them, or, scientists think, communicate with each other. It can even help them to camouflage. They do it by hiding their silhouettes from animals going after them. They produce enough light to match their surroundings. The biggest luminous underwater creature is the kite-fin shark, found swimming 980 feet below sea level, preying on groundfish or smaller sharks. It can grow almost 6 feet long and lives 3,200 feet below sea level. Deep-sea sharks are also bigger than those on the surface. The Greenland shark can grow up to 24 feet long, bigger than a great white. There's a thing called deep-sea gigantism. Creatures in nutrient-poor depths of the ocean grow bigger because, that way, they lose less energy as heat. The Greenland shark lives its life in slow motion. It has a slow metabolism and can go very long periods without food. With their slow pace, they evolved to live up to 500 years at depths of 7,200 feet. Sharks in shallow waters catch their prey relying on agility and speed, but for them, it's easier because there's plenty of food on the surface. Deep-sea sharks, with less food and slower life rhythm, had to develop a different style. They're more opportunistic, definitely not picky, and don't care if their future meal is alive or not. Frilled shark, another living fossil from the darkest depths, hasn't evolved much through time, and they're one of the last of their kind, with all of their relatives already gone extinct. It grows up to 7 feet long, primarily hunts on squid, and catches other sharks and fish. It looks like a dinosaur, a snake-like face, a long, smooth, thin body that moves in a serpentine way. It can propel itself with the power of its tail and curl like snakes. They don't swim in a straight line like other sharks. Cookie cutter shark grows up to 20 inches. It got the name because of the way it feeds, biting off small pieces. It's a parasite creature, which means it feeds off bigger animals but leaves them alive. They have sharp teeth and sometimes even swallow those that fall off on purpose. Some researchers think it could be because they live in the depths that are nutrient poor. If they swallow the teeth, they could recycle calcium and other material from it. Prickly shark is a rare and unusual creature with many thorn-like denticles and 2 small dorsal fins. It lives mostly in the depths of the Pacific region up to 1,900 feet. Ghost sharks are not even real sharks, but fish closely related to them and rays. They have big pectoral and pelvic fins, 2 dorsal fins, pretty big eyes, and unlike their cousins, have a single external gill opening. Ghost sharks have slender tails and can grow up to 80 inches, silver to blackish color. They sometimes live in rivers and coastal waters, but also in the depths of the ocean of 8,200 feet or even deeper. They are pretty weak swimmers, so they tend to feed on invertebrates and small fish. Goblin sharks. Swimming through the deep sea, this creepy shark with a flabby body suddenly sees a small, innocent squid. It goes toward it, but the potential snack notices it and quickly starts moving to dart away. It seems like the plan could work at first, but then the shark suddenly thrusts the jaw of its mouth and catches the poor little squid in a second. After the meal is finished, the animal simply fits the jaw back into the mouth and goes away as if nothing happened. This is possible because it has a jaw connected to 3-inch-long flaps of skin, which is why it can unfold from the snout. It can grow up to 12 feet long with a weight of 460 pounds. Scientists think goblin sharks are mostly active in the morning and evening. The shark has a long, prominent snout and specific sensing organs on it. It uses them to sense electrical fields in the dark oceanic depths. Seven-gill shark is a big cow shark, brown to silver-gray on top, white underneath, black and white spots, with a thick body, a small dorsal fin, and a wide, blunt snout. It can grow up to 10 feet long, mostly lives in the depth of 1,870 feet, but you can also find it in deep channels and bays. It can be aggressive toward humans if provoked, so don't. Like most deep-sea creatures, it's an opportunistic hunter that's not quite picky but likes to go after dolphins, seals, porpoises, and other marine animals. Megamouth sharks mostly live in the depths of 15,000 feet and spend most of their time in the dark, like me. Scientists discovered it in 1976 because it went near the surface at night to feed on zooplankton. That's the only time these sharks go there. During the day, they return to their quiet, dark, and mysterious depths. They are filter feeders, which means they keep their mouths wide open while swimming, so they filter the planktons they like to eat. There are organs that produce light inside of their mouths, which attracts potential prey, such as pelagic crustaceans. These sharks live in the deep parts of the ocean, but you can rarely find them below almost 2 miles. Scientists think some other, stronger bony fishes outcompeted them. Deep parts of oceans became oxygenated around 70 million years ago, and sharks have been around way longer. But bony fishes adjusted and adapted efficient ways to use oxygen, while sharks were slow with adaptations, so they lost. Also, oceanic depths are way colder, which is challenging for fish and the rest of cold-blooded animals because the speed of their metabolism widely depends upon the external temperature. So, you're diving in the Atlantic Ocean, and suddenly you realize you haven't seen anyone else around for a while. You come up to the surface and your boat's gone. No! In the distance, you can see an ocean buoy you can climb onto. You scramble to safety and look out at the open ocean around you. There's nothing but blue in every direction, except something large moving in the water grabs your attention. A dorsal fin breaks through the surface. It's all over! It's a great big shit! Wait a minute. It just rolled onto its side. Oh, it's not a shark at all. You just encountered the heaviest bonefish in the world, the sunfish. It can grow up to 14 feet long, and it lives deep down in the ocean. What you're seeing is the sunfish surfacing. Some people call it the mola mola. It mostly dines on jellyfish and can dive down anywhere from 600 to 2,600 feet. It's not sunbathing or anything, it's letting seabirds eat any little bugs that try to get away with a free ride. A delicious meal, I'm sure. Yeah. The sunfish is so large and heavy, it's extremely difficult for scientists to study it, especially when it swims down so deep. The mola mola, just like the jellyfish, is not even a fish. It's a plankton. It's kind of a laid-back creature that drifts with the current rather than swimming against it like normal fish. The sheep's head fish lives around the Gulf of Mexico and off the West Atlantic. It lives quite far down from the surface, and I hope it stays down there. Its teeth help snag its favorite food, shellfish. While it may look scary at first, the sheep's head fish is a regular at fish markets and some restaurants if you're game to try it. I know I wouldn't eat anything with teeth that looked like mine. The world's most misunderstood fish also happens to look like the saddest. The blobfish lives deep down off the coasts of Australia and New Zealand. It's considered one of the strangest creatures ever caught, and for good reason. This fish just isn't made for the surface. It looks like a melting pile of goo, with a frown. One thing we know about deep-sea fish is that we don't know anything about what really goes on down there. So, you make it to dry land and you hear a deep grumbling sound coming from the muddy sand nearby. Some strange eel-like animals are moving around. They might be cute, but picking one up might be a big mistake. They might mistake your finger for a nice mid-afternoon snack. The giant mud skipper lives throughout Southeast Asia and surprisingly can outrun a human if needed for a little while at least. They love muddy water, so they mostly hang out near shorelines. What makes these fish unique is that they spend most of their time out of the water. Although they only grow to about 1 foot long, they can jump about 2 feet. The walking trees of the Amazon are one of the biggest secrets of the forest. You head over there. These trees aren't walking around with legs like you or me, but they're still able to move about 60 feet every year or two. What happens is that new roots search for sunlight while the old roots leave the soil, one root in front of the other. Their movements are incredibly slow. You won't be able to sit there and watch them strut their stuff. But if you've got nothing but time on your hands, you'll notice the trees shifting week by week, trying to find the best possible life. You're walking in the West African jungle, whistling away. You pick up a small stick to get rid of some spider webs in your path. It's all good until you realize that stick is tickling your hand and bending. Lucky for you, you just picked up a giant African millipede. They grow to about a foot long, so they kind of look like a small snake. That tickling you feel is their 250 legs wiggling around. These millipedes are part of the same family as crabs and spiders, but they only really eat plants and fallen leaves. You pop over to Nevada for a nice walk. Hey, why not? It's way too hot, so you decide to jump into that nice pool of water you just found. The only problem? This place is way off limits, and swimming definitely isn't allowed. Why? Because of what could be the rarest fish in the world, the pupfish. They only grow about an inch long, and they only live here. They're precious and protected fish, so read the signs and don't even think about going swimming anywhere near them. The pupfish's backyard pool has another claim to fame. It's an earthquake indicator. When there's an earthquake, say in Indonesia, Japan, or China, waves start popping up right there in Nevada. You wouldn't be wrong for wanting to get your eyes checked if you saw this little guy sniffing around. The star-nosed mole is one of the weirdest creatures anywhere. Each one of the feelers on its nose help the almost blind mole find its food. Its nose is so sensitive, it can feel 5 times more than a human hand. That's not all. Star-nosed moles are also the world's fastest eaters. Wow, faster than me. They can even smell around for food underwater. Is there anything this mole can't do? Tardigrades, or as they're sometimes called, water bears, are one of the most interesting creatures on the planet, and also the craziest. These microscopic animals are the toughest creatures on Earth. How tough, you ask? Well, you can find them in the deepest parts of the ocean, high up on mountaintops, in volcanoes, rainforests, and even Antarctica. They're also the first animals to survive exposure to outer space. They can sleep for thousands of years without any food or water, and then get up and walk it off like it was nothing. The water bear could rule the planet, if only it was a little bigger. The blue glaucus looks something like out of a sci-fi movie. But no, this little animal is the weird uncle of the sea slug family, and you definitely don't want to pick it up. It blends perfectly into the ocean waves as it floats on the surface. The glaucus's bright shade of blue helps it melt into its background, but that's not what makes it special. Its sting is quite potent and not very pleasant, but the glaucus doesn't even produce its own venom. It just steals it off of other venomous water creatures. Not bad for something that's only an inch long. How about a delicious coconut? You need to regroup after seeing so many weird animals. Luckily, a coconut just fell from that tree, although something else fell as well. It seems like this coconut's already got an owner. Coconut crabs find coconuts on the floor and rip off that hairy brown stuff that's all over them. Then they grab the coconut with a claw and climb up a tree. From there, they chuck it down to the ground to open it up. So the crab's up there and its lunch is down on the ground. No problem. Coconut crabs love to jump from trees and can land unharmed from a 15-foot fall. This is one crab you wouldn't want to try to catch with your hands. The coconut crab's claw is the strongest of all crustaceans. If it can bust through a coconut, yeah. By now, you've seen your share of crazy, but no one is prepared for the hagfish. This fish looks like an eel, but with one extra superpower: slime. Less than a teaspoon of slime, when combined with water, can multiply up to 10,000 times. Once the hagfish oozes out its slime, nothing can get close. And what if some of the slime gets in its own nose? It learned to sneeze it out. They're also boneless and made entirely out of cartilage. Last one for today, introducing the purple frog. Not a very exciting name, I know. The purple frog is a strange-looking frog species. It looks like it just ate way too much, and it's got a nose like no other. What makes this creature even stranger is that it lives underground, and I don't mean just for a short while. The purple frog only comes out of its hole for 2 weeks a year. It mainly eats termites it finds underground, so why would it bother coming up to the surface at all?
The Megalodon shark roamed the oceans, scaring and chewing everything to pieces long after the dinosaurs were wiped out by the great meteorite. We know that it was the largest and most dangerous hunter that ever lived, as well as the biggest shark. It was the king of all seas, swimming freely between most parts of the ocean. But then, about 2.5 million years ago, the last of its kind disappeared from Earth forever, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. And it could be because of the great white sharks. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of gigantic version of this marine animal. This is a common misconception people make because these creatures were thought to be related. In fact, the Meg looked more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and long and massive pectoral fins that supported its weight. And what's more important, the ancestors of today's great whites existed at the same time as the Megalodon. But with great size comes great clumsiness. Although the Meg was huge and powerful, it was also not as nimble as the smaller and quicker great white sharks. Researchers believe that great whites actually rivaled with the Megalodon for food and were often more successful hunters thanks to their agility. They couldn't fight the Meg openly, but were fast enough to steal its food. So, the only food left for the Megalodon were whales and equally big marine animals. Adult Megs could easily catch such beasts, but their offspring were much smaller and more vulnerable than their parents. Scientists believe other sharks could have used this to their advantage. While the Megalodon was still little, it often became a meal for great whites, bull, and tiger sharks. Even then, a great white shark could be almost 20 feet long, while a Megalodon pup was typically twice as small. A pretty easy meal for a great white. But even if there had been no open confrontation between young Megalodons and smaller adult sharks, Meg pups wouldn't have been able to find food for themselves to grow to adulthood. The population of other sharks was growing, and they were rivaling with each other and the Megs for food. The more great whites and other sharks there were, the less food remained for the young monster sharks. Eventually, they would have simply starved. As if this wasn't enough for the Megalodon to cease to exist, their favorite big munch, the whales, began to adapt to changing conditions on Earth. The Meg was a warmth-loving shark, and it was abundant in tropical and subtropical waters. When they first evolved, about 20 million years ago, the climate on the planet was much milder. Both land and seas were generally warmer, and so the Meg could swim and eat wherever it pleased. As years went by, the climate went on changing though. It became extremely cold closer to the poles, and lots of marine animals and fish had to adapt to this temperature shift. But the Megalodon didn't cope as well. It still loved warm waters, so it stayed where it felt comfortable, even if that area was shrinking. What it didn't realize was that whales were among those who became okay with the cold. The big marine mammals went further north, and Meg was left without a supper.
The sight of its fin in the water nearly stops your heart. It's the reason you feel so uneasy going for a swim at the beach. That massive, razor-toothed hunter that's made its name known, the great white shark. So, if the ultimate terror of the sea is leaving the area, it must be for a good reason. But what could possibly scare the great white away? A giant Lovecraftian monster that makes even Megalodon look tiny? Nah, not even close. Nothing can clear a portion of the ocean as quickly as orcas can. When their powerful pods come looking for food like seals and squids, even the biggest, scariest sharks leave the area without looking back. It's not known if these whales specifically target great whites, or they're just keeping the competition out of the area. But what marine experts do know is that sharks flee, sometimes not even coming back until the following year. Yeah, makes sense. Orcas are much larger than great whites in size. They have plenty of teeth, and they'll use them to satisfy their merciless desire for meat. Orcas are also highly intelligent and will work as a team to get what they want, whether that's catching a school of fish, getting seals off the ice, or even chasing down humpback whales. So, if the great white shark itself is scared of the mighty orca, should you be? Well, me personally, I keep my distance from any wild animal. But maybe this will help you sleep better at night. Orcas are known to be picky eaters. Good news for you, human isn't on the menu. They aren't likely to change their diet just because you're in the water today. Oh, by the way, orcas aren't even whales. They're technically the largest species of dolphin. And sharks are also afraid of their relative, the bottlenose dolphin. Even a single bottlenose is too powerful for a shark, but they're tougher when they travel as a pod. Sharks are easily outmaneuvered by the highly agile marine mammals. They use that blunt snout like a battering ram. This basically annoys the shark so much that it just leaves the area. Now, if you think about other top hunters in the animal kingdom, wolves always come to mind. Packs can take over vast territories. And since they're at the top of the food chain, they get to pick and choose from a large menu with anything they please. They're highly intelligent, fast, and agile, but probably their biggest advantage? Numbers. If grizzlies or mountain lions try taking advantage of them, the numbers game always works in the wolves' favor, leading to the hunter becoming the hunted. Even without numbers, they dominate and terrify. It's too hard for any other animal to target a lone wolf, so even they are usually left alone. Imagine being able to pounce a wild boar in below freezing temperatures while dressed in orange against a completely snow-covered white environment. Siberian tigers are clearly not playing around. Over 10 feet long and weighing up to 400 pounds, they're the largest of all wild cats. This kitty could easily jump right over your head while carrying double its body weight. The only animal that can really challenge this king of the forest is a large enough brown bear, and it'd be a close call. No wonder the Siberian tiger is the top of the food chain in its part of the globe. As for the top boss in the waters of South America, that would be the green anaconda. Not even jaguars and caiman are safe around the biggest snake in the world. The murky waters of riverbanks camouflage the giant snake perfectly. They go unnoticed, sitting there waiting for something to come have a drink. And then, whoosh, the snake strikes. It uses its sharp curved teeth and 15 feet of pure muscle to hold its lunch in place. Luckily for most animals, after eating their fill, anacondas can go weeks or even months without worrying about their next meal. But the world's biggest snake isn't the most dangerous. That title belongs to the black mamba. Lions, spotted hyenas, giraffes, and even elephants will avoid the mamba at all costs. They all know one bite can stop them very quickly. Growing up to 14 feet, it's the second longest venomous snake in the world after the king cobra. The African black mamba does hold the top spot as the world's fastest snake. It slithers along going 12 miles per hour. That's about where most treadmills max out. Not top dog, but worth a mention is the green anaconda's neighbor, the electric eel. Very few animals are willing to take on such a highly charged creature. Electric eels have around 6,000 special cells that can produce up to 800 volts of electricity. That's more than 6 times the standard US wall socket. That's enough to knock a horse off its feet and to power holiday lights. In 2019, a Tennessee aquarium hooked some tree lights up to their eel tank. Every time the eel shocked the water, the trees lit up. Now, it's been said that the electric eel can recycle its volts in a process called revolting. Nah, I made that up. One more truthful eel fact to knock you off your feet: electric eels are air breathers. They have to surface about every 10 minutes to fill their mouth with air. Yep, their single lung is in their mouth. Does the king of the jungle reign unchallenged? In books and movies, sure. In real life, not so much. For one, their home is on the African plains, not the jungle. A whole assortment of contenders, like hyenas, leopards, and crocodiles, are always trying to take the king's crown. Even zebras and giraffes can stop the big cats with a quick kick if they're cornered. If we go by bite force, the African Nile crocodile has the biggest that humanity has ever measured. Its jaws are 5 times more powerful than that of a lion's. Now earlier, with the water critters, all you had to do was avoid the water. Good luck avoiding a lion. They can run 50 miles per hour, jump the length of a school bus, and climb trees. The lion's biggest challenger for the apex role is the African wild dog. These two are constantly going at it because they hunt for the same food in the same area. Where there's a big pride of lions, the dogs have no choice but to flee. But they've got one thing against the cats: endurance. Lions might reach incredible speeds, but that's only in short bursts. It takes too much energy to carry 400-plus pounds of muscle over long distances while going as fast as you can. African wild dogs, though, have long, slender legs and big lungs for their body size. Meaning, they can run fast and keep it up for miles. That's how they hunt. Their lunch just gets tired of running. There's one animal brave enough to take on the king if the cat gets too curious: the hippo. They may seem cute and squishy, but hippos are one of the most dangerous animals on the planet. Based on statistics, you should fear them way more than great white sharks. And there's nothing squishy about them. Hippos are pure muscle and weigh as much as a car. Their pointy canine teeth can grow longer than your forearm. These guys aren't afraid of anything. Even lions and crocodiles prefer to keep their distance. Their name means water horse, and they do spend up to 16 hours a day submerged. Funny thing is, hippos can't really swim. If you see one swimming, it's actually pushing itself off the lake or river bottom. It can still beat even the best Olympic swimmer speed, so watch out. Yep, move aside, Leo. Hippos are the true apex animal of Africa. But I wouldn't get close enough to give them the award. As for the ruler of the forest, make way for the grizzly bear. Weighing over half a ton, you'd be mistaken thinking these large fluff balls are slow and bumbling. Being able to maintain a speed of 25 miles per hour for long stretches is too easy for the behemoth brown bear. Uphill, downhill, and on every terrain, they're the off-road SUV of the animal world. Without having any natural enemies, this bear is at the top of its local food chain. Good thing they sleep for a third of the year. Just hope you don't run into a grizzly, ever. But especially right before it's about to go into hibernation. They spend the autumn months fattening up for winter. And they're even hungrier than usual. Now, being the largest bird of prey in North America, it's no wonder the golden eagle is found all over the continent in woodlands and mountain ranges. Their wingspan is nearly 8 feet. And they don't call it eagle vision for nothing. These birds can spot a rabbit from 3 miles up in the air. It'd be like you seeing an ant while standing on top of a 10-story building. Golden eagles can also make quick dives from a great height. During these dives, they can reach speeds up to 200 miles per hour, as fast as a flying arrow. You lie on the beach and decide to swim before going to bed. You go into the water up to your knees and notice a bluish-green glow in the distance. It seems to you that a gem reflects the moonlight, so you go ahead. Stop and get out of there! The glow floats in your direction, and you see a small fish through the water the size of a cat. Its skin glows. It doesn't look unsafe, but in fact, it's one of the most dangerous fish on the planet. You won't confuse the cookie-cutter shark with other marine predators. It has a round mouth armed with small, sharp teeth, which can leave a mark on a wooden boat the shape of cookies. Despite its size, this fish scares great white sharks, whales, hammerhead sharks, you name it. Once it even managed to damage the submarine with its bites. Usually this predator lives deep in the ocean, but there are cases when it attacks people. You're diving, looking at the seafloor, and suddenly notice that it begins to move. There are several types of fish that can merge with the sea landscape, and one of them is the angel shark. It looks like a stingray and seems quite friendly. Don't swim close to it. This predator is fast and has a strong jaw filled with sharp teeth. It's aggressive and can attack. You're swimming in the water with a mask and see a shoal of small fish in the distance. Something long flies into the shoal and begins to churn the water. Fish swim away in different directions. That must be the thresher shark catching prey. This shark has a long tail, similar to a whip, and it uses it to stun little fish. Of course, if the shark sees danger, it will wave its tail for defense, and you don't want to get under this strong strike. If you see a fish with small ridges over its eyes looking like horns, then know that it's most likely the horn shark. This predator is not aggressive. It calmly swims in seas and oceans and searches for its favorite foods – crabs, crayfish, prawns, and sea urchins. But it's still better not to approach it, as the shark has one of the strongest bites among all species, and its back and fins are covered with sharp spikes. And if you see one off the Normandy coast of France, it must be the French horn shark. Nah, I just made that up. One of the scariest sharks you can meet is the goblin shark. You can recognize it by its long tail and pinkish skin tone. It lives off the Japanese coast and got its name from its unusual appearance. Imagine that you're on a boat and see this shark swimming by. You take a stake out of the container and raise it over the ocean. The shark comes out of the water and reaches for food. At this point, it opens its mouth, and a jaw with sharp teeth moving out of it grabs the meat from your hand. The shark slides the jaw back and swims away. Gee! To meet this shark, you need to go down to the bottom of the ocean. There's almost no light there, but you'll see it from afar. A glowing blue head. The shark's body is black and can't be seen, so it looks like the head is swimming by itself. This small predator can fit in an adult's palm, but it's better not to try to hold it if you don't want to meet with little sharp teeth. It's called ninja lantern shark. Nobody knows exactly why its head is glowing. It may be a way to lure prey, but there's also a theory that sharks communicate with each other using light. In the deep ocean waters, you can see a large snake. It seems like it's crawling on the seafloor. Its movements are fast and agile. This marine predator is also a shark. The frilled shark is similar to a snake, not only in appearance. It can also swallow prey larger than half of its 7-foot body. It has about 200 sharp teeth. You won't confuse it with a sea eel and other snake-like sea creatures. In the cold waters, where most sharks don't swim, you can meet this incredible creature. Most likely, you won't see it, because the short-fin mako shark swims too fast. It's about 35 miles per hour, which is faster than a leopard. Its prey has no chance of escape, and its enemies will never catch up with it. If you see a small glowing cave with unusual teeth looking like plates moving toward you from the depths, then you should immediately get out of the water. Although it's unlikely you can see this creature in person. The megamouth shark is one of the rarest sharks in the world. Scientists have not yet fully studied it. This fish, the size of a car, rarely closes its large mouth, which can easily fit an adult human. Fortunately, it eats plankton and won't do you harm. Yeah. You won't confuse this shark with anything else. The saw shark is a fish with a long nose similar to a saw. Those little cogs on the shark's nose are teeth that grow outwards. Each tooth is equipped with an electroreceptor that can sense the electric fields coming from other fish. In conditions of poor visibility, this shark can detect prey using its nose as a radar. The shark saw masters the saw as a professional swordsman and can hit strongly and accurately. A shark that will notice you much earlier than you do it is the hammerhead shark. Its eyes, placed on the size of the hammer, look in almost all directions at once. No fish can swim past this shark unnoticed. It uses its head not only for panoramic observation, but also for hunting. Hammerhead shark's favorite food is stingrays. They're like blankets, invisibly floating on the seafloor. But they can hide from the sharp eyes of this shark. It uses the hammer to pin the stingrays to the ground. Hey, how about we get the saw shark and hammerhead shark together and do a little carpentry? I could use a chair. In the waters of the Arctic, if you are lucky enough, you can meet the Greenland shark. You can rarely find this large, slow, but majestic creature on the surface, since it dwells in the ocean depths. It can live for an impressive 300 years and longer, so some of them probably witnessed the times when all ships were made of wood. White and tiger sharks are some of the main species that pose a danger to people. You can identify them by the triangular fins sticking out of the water, but it's much easier to predict their appearance if you pay attention to the external environment. You're much more likely to meet sharks early in the morning or late in the evening. At this time, it's better to relax on the beach and not get into the water. Also, you should avoid river mouths with silt and muddy water. This is where tiger sharks, some of the most bad-tempered sharks in the world, most often live. But the main sign that sharks are somewhere around is fishing boats. If you see them on the horizon, don't go into the water. People use nets to catch large numbers of fish, and where there are a lot of fish, there's a shark swimming around and trying to get food. If you're in the water and already see a shark swimming towards you, then you still have a chance to survive. The main thing is not to panic, it says here. Don't splash and don't make sudden movements not to excite the shark. Don't swim away from it because it can think you are prey. The shark will circle around you, so don't lose sight of it. You can slowly swim to the shore until you reach shallow water, then quickly escape. But be careful, the shark can even get you out of there. If the shark still attacks you, then you'll have to fight for your life. Weak points of the shark are eyes and gills. And hey, let me know how it goes. So you're swimming 2 miles down at the bottom of the ocean. Don't ask me how, just play along. It's cold and the pressure is intense. No fish in sight. Then you notice a green shiny thing. It's a cookie cutter shark. Its neck glows in the dark to attract fish and other delicious treats. The shark doesn't look like much. It's small, about the size of a cat. It has brown skin and large green eyes. But looks can be deceiving. Every night, this creature rises to the surface and goes after great white sharks, whales, even swordfish. If you look closely, you'll see a round mouth with a bunch of sharp teeth in it. They don't just bite, they work kind of like a saw. This one's called a cookie cutter shark because when it sees something delicious, it takes a cookie-shaped bite out of it. These sharks have even been known to disable submarines. Wonder what flavor they are. Our next shark is about the length of a car. Only about 100 of these sharks have ever been seen, but if you met one, you'd never forget it. It has a big mouth, a huge mouth, a mega mouth, like me. It's the mega mouth shark. You could easily fit in it if you curled yourself up. They're not dangerous though, not to humans. They feed by swimming around with their mouths open, filtering out plankton and other underwater goodies. The shark has special organs in its mouth that glow, attracting little crustaceans. It swims deep in the ocean in total darkness. Probably has a great smile though. Thresher sharks also have a huge body part, the tail. It's almost half the length of the shark itself, and it looks like a helicopter blade. It's one of the few animals that hunts using its tail. The shark sneaks up on a school of fish and starts to shake its moneymaker. This freaks out some of the fish, which is exactly the plan. In a pinch, it can also use its tail to defend itself. The best thing about this shark, it doesn't attack people. The angel shark. There are quite a few types of angel shark out there, but they're more shark than angel. They're flat like stingrays, and their skin is covered with patterns that help them blend in with the seafloor. Because of this disguise, divers sometimes accidentally touch them, which isn't the best idea. They're fast and have powerful jaws. Still, they prefer the taste of small fish to you. The horn shark has two ridges that look like horns right above its eyes. It's definitely the grandpa of the shark world. Not aggressive, swims pretty slowly, and is up late almost every night. Its two favorite meals, sea urchins and crustaceans. It moves its fin on the seafloor almost as if it had paws. But don't underestimate this guy. It has one of the strongest bites of any shark. It needs those strong teeth to crush the shells of its late-night meals. And if something tries to attack it, watch out. Horned sharks have sharp spikes on their fins. The award for the ugliest shark goes to the goblin shark, and it's not even close. From the outside, it already looks kinda weird and is about the size of a pink underwater motorbike. It has a long tail and a seriously long nose. It lives way down in the depths of the ocean and loves to eat squid. It's not as fast as its relatives, but it's way more sneaky. It has a secret squid catching technique which is totally wild. The shark swims behind the squid. It's catching up, getting closer and closer, but the squid isn't slowing down, no way. It looks like the poor goblin shark won't have any lunch today. Then it opens its mouth. Its jaw is attached to folds of skin that mean it can literally throw its jaw out of its mouth. And it's a shark, so those teeth are sharp. That extra reach helps it grab its lunch, and when the meal's over, it pops its jaw back in its mouth. These sharks have been seen many times off the coast of Japan. They're actually named after the goblins in Japanese myths and fairy tales. There's only one thing out there cooler than a ninja shark. It's the ninja lantern shark. Imagine there's a tube you can slide down that takes you to the bottom of the ocean. It's too dark, you can't see anything. Suddenly, a glowing dot, moving around in the distance. It's coming closer, shooting towards you. It's a blue, glowing head. Worse, it looks like this head doesn't have a body attached to it. The ninja lantern shark has black skin, so it's almost invisible in the dark. It's only the size of a human arm, but its small, sharp teeth are no joke. No one really knows why this shark glows. Maybe to attract tasty fish? Another theory out there is that it uses this light to communicate with its friends. It has friends? The hammerhead shark. These ferocious sharks can weigh up to half a ton. They live in tropical waters all over the world, and they're one of the most recognizable sharks out there. Their eyes really are located on the sides of their hammerhead. This means they can see in almost all directions. They even have special neck muscles to lift their head up and down just to see that little bit better. Their favorite food? Stingrays. You know, those flat things that swim along the seafloor, camouflaged to look like sand and bits of rock. Stingrays get by blending in with their surroundings. Danger mostly just swims by. But the hammerhead's eyes see everything. Uh-oh. Great white sharks, hammerheads, and other large sharks live for about 25 years. But one shark can live much, much longer. The Greenland shark can live anywhere from 300 to 500 years. It lives mostly in the North Atlantic and Arctic oceans. It loves to swim deep down where it's dark, so it uses its nose to sniff out food. Since it spends so much time down there, it's figured out how to withstand the strong pressure. It's one of the oldest living, largest, and slowest fish on Earth. Just imagine, you're on an Arctic cruise and you see one of these sharks moving slowly through the freezing cold water. It might be 400 years older than you. Most sharks are omnivorous. They can go after dolphins, other sharks, crabs, sea urchins, smaller or even larger fish, hot dogs. Kidding about the hot dogs. But the bonnethead shark is a bit different. It eats algae for about half its meals. It's actually related to the hammerhead shark, but its head looks more like a shovel. Can you dig it? If you see this guy swimming around, you might think it's a sea snake or a huge water worm. Frilled sharks like to swim way down at the bottom of the ocean, like a lot of sharks. When they're chasing something delicious, they move kind of like a snake. And just like a snake, they like to gulp down their lunch all in one piece. But that doesn't mean they don't have teeth. They have about 200 nice and sharp ones. The saw shark has a long, flat, and seriously spiky nose. Those teeth on its nose never stop growing. Each tooth is equipped with electric receptors to help the saw shark feel around for nearby fish, like a ship's radar. When dinner's nearby, the shark swims up and strikes with its nose, waving it around like a knight showing off his skills. Meanwhile, you won't have time to blink if this guy floats past. Did you see it? How about now? Meet the fastest shark in the world, the short-fin mako shark. It can swim up to 35 miles per hour. That doesn't seem that quick on land, but underwater, that's fast. Slower than a cheetah, but faster than most dogs. It's warm-blooded, which is super rare for a shark. That helps it swim to cold and distant places where an ordinary shark simply wouldn't survive. The swordfish goes much faster. It can swim up to 60 miles per hour. It's not a shark, but it's still an amazing creature. In a race, the swordfish will usually come out on top, but it's not just fast, it's ingeniously fast. It has a gland next to its nose that pumps out a special oil. This oil spreads through its nose and comes out through tiny holes. This special oil is waterproof, which lets the swordfish glide through the water at high speed.